Welcome back to the Messy Success Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Henson. This is episode 111, and we have a very special guest for you guys today, Miriam, who is an artist and the host of the Inspiration Place podcast. She's also written the book Artpreneur, is going to be joining us, and this was really exciting because you guys know that I am really leaning into creatives and artists as we continue to grow things over here at Elizabeth Henson Co. But today, Miriam has some golden nuggets for you. She is the founder of the Inspiration Place, where she helps other artists learn how to profit from their passion or become better artists. She's helped thousands of artists around the world develop their skill sets and create more time and freedom to do what they love. Her art and story have been featured in some seriously awesome publications like Forbes, the New York Times, Art of Man, Art Journaling Magazine, as well as NBC's Parenthood and the Amazon series Hunters. My goodness, this is a mouthful, Miriam. You are so inspiring. So I cannot wait for you guys to meet her and to go check her out and check out her Artpreneur book. And let's go ahead and get started. All right, welcome, Miriam. I am so excited to have you here today. I have already shared a little bit about this pivot change that I'm doing. And when I finally got the chance to meet you, I was like, I cannot wait to hear more about you and Artpreneur and your book. But let's hear it in your words, what you do and how you help people.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Elizabeth. It's an honor to be on the Messy Success podcast. So, I've been an artist for over 20 years, and the last few years, I've been focusing on helping other artists have the same success. And that is also what brought the book out. Is I wanted, during the pandemic, I decided I really wanted to write a book, so everything went into one place. Of course, the book isn't nothing can be everything, but I really wanted to create a legacy that would encapsulate my most important lessons for artists that achieved my success to help others.
I love it. So, what did you do before all of this? Like, tell me a little bit, like the Cliff Notes version of from like school to here.
Okay, so the 5-minute version is
I know it's so hard
I
to do,
know.
right?
All
People ask
right.
me that all the time, and I'm like, here we go.
Like, which version do I give? The Edith Bunker version where it's like year by year by year, or like the Cliff Notes. Okay. So I always wanted to be an artist, but I came from a single parent home. My father passed away when I was 5, and my mom did not want me to be an artist. I mean, now she's happy with me, of course. But I was given the very strong message, as many people are, to be a doctor or a doctor's wife, or I would be a disappointment to my family. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I really wasn't in the position to not be financially independent. So, like I said, I was from a single parent home, and I went to school on financial aid. So I just didn't believe I could make a living. So I said, okay, where's the money? And the answer is Wall Street. So that's why I ended up on Wall Street. And after 9/11 happened, that's basically when I took that as a sign from the universe that I was not going to go to back to that world. I happened to be on maternity leave at that time, but I was decided I was never going to go back to Wall Street ever. And at first I didn't believe that I could make a living as an artist. I started
Mm.
painting on the side. I was doing portraits. I took a job as a Pilates instructor at a gym. And that's when I had my aha moment, because the gym were teaching us how to sell personal training packages. They make a lot of money on those upsells, like these big chain gyms. So they were investing in the instructors to learn these selling skills. So when they were teaching me these selling skills, I was like, oh, I can use these same things to sell my portraits. Bye bye, Felicia. I was like done with the gym, except, of course, as a client. And that's when that was like over 20 years ago. And since then, I've made a point of being a student of marketing as well as my artwork, because I know how important being a good marketer is for thriving as an artist.
Oh my gosh, that's so good because I think anything that's visual, photography, fine arts is like everyone says, just make your work so good that it speaks for itself. And that is not the world we live in anymore.
No, no, it could, because here's the thing, and I like to say that mindset and marketing trump talent. And we
Mm,
all kind of know this because we've all seen people who are at the top of their field, whether it's art or coaching or marketing or whatever, whatever. We've all seen less talented people at the top, and we've
yep.
all seen very talented people flounder. So it's not enough just to be a good artist.
Yeah, it's really not.
Yeah,
I mean, back when that was all we had, right? Like there was no real marketing. I mean, I guess maybe you had newspaper ads or
the
billboards.
marketing's been around for a very long time. So we can go back 500 years, and Rubens, so Rubens, very famous artist that we all, seen, and
Hmm.
or maybe some of you have listening haven't, but let's just assume you know who Rubens is. I mean, he's not one of the Ninja Turtles, but so Rubens, he was also a diplomat, so he was aware of what was happening politically, and he knew it'd be very difficult to get his art out of the Netherlands. So what did he do? He had engravings made of his artwork, and he had that sent out to the different crown families across Europe. So basically he made flyers, but engravings a little bit fancier. So he was basically marketing. He was marketing. So
Yeah,
marketing's been around for hundreds of years.
it's just always
That's right.
changing,
It's
right?
changing. Like now, maybe it's not, he's not having and you don't have to have an engraving made and sent out by messenger on horseback. So it's a lot easier to do it now. But yeah, it's been around for a long time.
Oh my gosh. And I feel like I was one of those photographers. I was good, don't get me wrong, but like I was no better than anyone else and I found way more success in my area because I can't even really be like, "Oh my god, I didn't know anything about marketing at the time." Nothing, but I was sharing everything and I wasn't afraid to look bad or I wasn't afraid to show people that I was learning. Tell me a little bit about when you think of marketing for the arts and kind of being vulnerable and not just like hiding in your closet and waking up one day and saying, "Hey, I'm a beautiful painter," but like how do you get from point A to point B and grow an audience along the way?
Well, you said something very important back there, and that was mentioning your fear. Because remember, I said it's mindset and marketing, and mindset really is the number one thing. Because if you have fears, you won't listen to the marketing's advice. You just won't, because this is the way our brains have evolved. Our brains have evolved for survival, not
Hmm.
goal achievement. That means anytime, Elizabeth, that you or I, if we're on a podcast and we're suggesting to somebody that they do something that makes them feel the least bit uncomfortable, they will come up in their mind with all kinds of reasons about why that won't work for them. They don't perceive these as excuses. And the smarter you are, the better you're going to be at coming up with these stories. And the more creative you are, the better you're going to be coming up with these convincing stories. And so these
Hmm.
stories, you perceive them as real. You believe your own, can we say bullshit on this podcast? Okay.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
believe
yeah.
your own bullshit. It feels real to you. It feels real. So that is
Yes.
going to keep you from moving forward, because you have basically, I call them doubts, but you have these limiting beliefs. They're limiting beliefs because you believe them. You don't realize that this is some bullshit you've been telling yourself. And that's what keeps you from moving forward. So if you have a doubt about whether something's going to work, usually people are going to do one of two things. They're either not going to do the thing at all because they believe it's not going to work, or they go into what I call procrastinating mode. Ever done that?
That's
Like,
fun.
yeah, it's really fun. Like, and a lot of the procrastinating is because people don't want to fail. They don't want to look bad. This
Mm,
is what you said that was so important. They don't want to look bad. They don't want to fail. They feel that if they only had enough information and knew all the steps, it would keep themselves safe. But it just doesn't work like that.
yeah, yeah. I know. It's actually the opposite of what we think. And you're right, our brains are wired to keep us safe. And we actually, most of us are negative thinkers. And when you really look at what makes people successful, it's because they've been able to break out of that habit, that way that we're born, to actually think kind of negative and be like, this sucks, right? Whereas successful people start to see opportunity and data in all those failures, right? Like being a scientist of our own experiment. That's all business is. That's all marketing is, because what works for you may not work for me.
That's right. And if you see yourself in what we're describing as being a negative thinker, don't feel bad. It's not your fault. Most human beings are this way. That negativity bias is a survival mechanism. So, what I talk about in my book, Artpreneur, is you need to override that by celebrating your wins and
Hmm.
really taking the time, because most of the time us humans don't take the time to imprint those wins. We're just so focused on the negative.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's crazy, and it's, even with all the training that I've had, I still catch myself, right, with like the victim triangle, like, but I'm like the helper. So I always want to save the day when really that's just enabling people to stay small or make more mistakes, right? Everyone has a different kind of victim mentality. So tell us a little bit about the journey in writing the book. I know I have some students that have written books or want to write books. You said you wrote it to keep everything kind of in one place, but I know there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I feel so. I mentioned in the beginning that my father passed away when I was 5. And I think a lot of that mortality motivation has driven me. So, as an artist, I was creating portraits because I wanted to leave a legacy for not just, something that I created, but a legacy for the family. When I started teaching online art classes, same thing. I wanted to create a legacy of how my techniques, what I know, leave that behind. And it was the same thought process with the book. I wanted to create a legacy of what I
Mm.
know. And I wanted to create something that was truly evergreen, that didn't rely on this year's social media tactic.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about like being able to touch it and have that tactile experience that books still provide. Like even in this digital world that we live in, people are still reading
Oh,
books,
absolutely. I mean, of course, there's also audiobook too. I think everything is
but they want to touch
it's a
them.
different art form. Whether
Yeah.
you're enjoying the tactile experience of a book or the audio. I did something a little different than most audiobooks. So for a lot of the part of the book where it's the how to and the practical, so I'm going through all different, not just mindset, but all 5 parts of how to build a successful business, whether it's your production, your pricing, your promotion, your productivity, or your prospecting. And so I went through and found all the podcasts I did on each of those topics and pulled quotes from my podcast guests. And then what I did inside the audiobook was it's their actual audio in the book. So
Oh,
it's not just
cool.
me talking. Yeah, and a big part of
Yeah,
that
that's
was I
great.
really wanted to write a book and create an audiobook that was inclusive, because I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but a lot of business books that you pick up, they're written by bro marketers, for bro marketers, about other bro marketers. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like even their quotes, like it's like you get to the end of the
Yeah,
book, I didn't see a single woman here. What the heck? You know,
yeah. No, that's so, I mean, that's so true.
so
I was just recently helping someone promote a book, and the book itself is amazing and he's amazing, but like the visuals were like bro marketing to a T. And I was like, you're so much better than this. Like, this is not like 2005 anymore. Like, come on, like, let's evolve.
yeah, I'm unfortunately, it's not just men who are guilty of this. I know it's hard for us as well, because we're living in a world where so much of the male genius is what is being promoted. So many people can
Mm,
only, they can't name 5 female artists. They can't do that. And so it has to be a very conscious effort to be inclusive in everything you do, and we have to do it just as much as the boys do.
yeah. Okay. I've got a question for you. I have a lot of students who are artists who have found a lot of success like locally. They're doing murals in our area. They're getting like their artwork in all the shops in our local area. What advice would you give for those artists to get them on bigger stages and kind of get them outside of their local area and in, to more like national recognition, or not necessarily just moving their shop online, but like to become more well known in the
Well,
industry?
that's a great question. And first of all, Elizabeth, I just want to applaud all of your students who are having local success, because I do think that's the best place to start, is to become like a
Mm,
micro celebrity locally and to really gain that experience with people in real life, not on the internet. And it makes it easier to take your message to the online world once you've gotten that feedback by doing it in a way that's not as scalable. Now, for the artists who I work with, and I also talk about this in the book about how to play a bigger game, it comes down to publicity. So we talked about publicity
mm,
earlier. So a lot of
mhm,
times we are given the myth that it happens on Instagram. But what I've noticed for a very long time is the people who are famous on Instagram are usually famous off of Instagram first. So
mm.
like Kim Kardashian, she has or whoever you want to, any of those Kardashians, they have big followings not because of Instagram. And it's also true with
Yeah,
art.
that's right.
So Ashley Longshore is a pop artist who I like to reference a lot. She she has a huge Instagram following, and she likes to promote the myth that that is the cause of it, of her success, but it isn't. If you look at her Instagram, you can see she has several highlight reels all about the press that she's received. So she has a huge
Mm,
following on Instagram because of all of those press opportunities. And as she was building up her page, is she would, tag Vogue if she was in Vogue, and Vogue would feature her back. So that is how she built such a huge following, was from publicity. And this is something that is available to all those artists that, you were just talking about. I worked with someone who had a local following. Her name's Elizabeth Mordensky. She was what do you call it, a guide at Yellowstone Park, and she also made oil paintings of wildlife with finger using her fingers. Very interesting process. So when I started working with her, I suggested that she lean into publicity. Now, usually you want to get publicity that is free. She did actually take out a paid ad, but what she did was very smart. She negotiated with the magazine to run a feature on her if she took out paid advertising. Her first ad
mm.
led to a collector who spent $9,500 on her art, and that has led to future purchases of almost $30,000. Now, those additional purchases came not just from the magazine, but then also using the traditional marketing of emailing and staying in touch and building it up. But if you want to get your art noticed, publicity is the way to go.
Yeah, no, that's really great feedback. And I love that she was smart and negotiated in that way, cuz even doing PR for some of the law firms that I work with, like I never really thought to try to negotiate. They're like, "Oh yeah, we'd love to sponsor that, but can you kind of give us like a solo feature or something like that as well?" That's really, really smart, especially if it's something that serves their audience. It's an easy yes.
Yeah, and I've done that for Artwork Archive wanted to come on my show, and I said this sounds more like a sponsored interview, and they
Mm,
were all in
mhm.
because my audience serves them exactly, so it works both ways.
Yeah, gosh, I just listened to a really good, we're getting a little bit off the path here, but this is top of mind and I think kind of important, and you might be able to give me some feedback here. Like I listened to a really great podcast episode with the chief officer of Entrepreneur Magazine, and they were talking a lot about pitches and what makes them say yes. And one of them, was like, "What about like sponsored? Like, why don't you guys charge for your space?" And he said, and this is like, I've been really pushing some of my CEOs to do sponsored podcasts. And he was like, if somebody is not monetizing their own audience, then they're going to monetize you. And someone that monetizes their audience isn't going to need to have sponsored, you know, people on their podcasts. And it was what I needed to hear because, we had this opportunity to be on a pretty big podcast with a lot of listeners, but I was like, "I don't know, it just doesn't feel right to just, like, pay to play." Um, so I feel like it's really pushing me to work on those pitches and the storytelling so that it's always an easy yes
Yeah, and
for
before we hit
serving the
record,
audience.
you and I were discussing that, and so I have not paid to be on a podcast, and I don't think you should either. So the
Yeah.
person, so it's not that I don't think this person should have paid to be on it. But I don't charge artists who come on my podcast. I don't charge
Mm,
thought leaders. There was only 2 instances, and I've been podcasting for 5 years, where I've taken money for someone to be on my podcast, and the sponsored interview was one of them, and the other situation was for a not for the whole episode, but for placements, beginning, mid-roll, end rolled, and it was for a tent,
mhm,
what those canopy tents that artists
mhm.
use, and this company sponsored that show, so they paid for the advertising, and the content was related to what they do. So, yeah, there are a lot of podcasters who charge for it, for people to come on their show.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a right or wrong, but it definitely pushed me to, like, think a little bit differently because I think I was wanting to push that easy button, right? Like, I was wanting to stay comfortable and, well, if we just pay, then it's easy and we get exposure, but that's not gonna drive the results that we really
No,
need,
and this comes up so much, especially for artists, because so many people, and they don't do it maliciously. It's, again, it's part of their socialization. But I'm going to use the words prey on artists. But I don't think people who are
Mhm.
asking for these things are doing it maliciously. But they'll say, "Oh, give your art to us for the exposure," and I'll have artists come to me. Should I do it for the exposure? So the story I like to tell is, you would never say to your plumber, "You know what? A lot of people use my toilet. Instead of charging me to fix it, why don't we just put a sign over it that says that you fixed my toilet?" No one would ever go for that. It's like, no one in any other industry does that. So we don't need
That's
to
so
pimp
true.
ourselves out that way.
That's so true, and I went through that a ton with my local photography, like, people were always like, "Oh, but, like, I'll share your picture, or I'll give you exposure," and I just always felt like I wanted to choose. Like, I will choose when I pitch someone and offer a trade or,
Yeah.
I'll come, photograph your storefront in exchange for, like, featuring your storefront in a blog or whatever, like, I wanna choose. It never felt right when people asked me for free pictures for the exposure.
Right, and we have a saying among some of my artist friends that artists die from overexposure. Like, we don't need
Yeah.
exposure. Like, and that's what I'll say to people. I'm sorry, I don't need exposure. I really don't. I mean, I want publicity, but exposure, anytime
It's different.
exposure is being used as a word, it's not a good opportunity.
That's so true. Okay, I had another question for you. How or do you help, or what does it look like when you have an artist that just loves to paint? They know there's more to it, and you can exchange that for any medium, but they truly just love the craft. How do you find their marketing story? How do you make it more than just beautiful art?
Okay, art is never neutral. It isn't, and collectors don't want art that's just neutral. They are
Mm,
always buying your story, or the story they wanna tell their friends when people come over to see it, or if it's any
mm,
other kind of art, the story matters. We see that all the time, and this is the thing. Not everyone's going to like your story. You don't want everyone to like your story. You want people to either love your story or hate your story, because there's no money in the middle. So that is what I talk
right.
about inside Artpreneur, and also in my programs. It's about embracing your inner weirdo and going through, what is it that makes you different, makes you unique? What are your quirks? What are your values? And stop hiding them. Nobody wants
Mhm.
neutral vanilla.
That's so true. It's like attract and repel and having the courage to be disliked, right? Oh
That's
my
right.
gosh.
That's the
So important though.
hardest thing to do. You cannot people please with your message. You cannot people please with your marketing, and you cannot people please with your art.
Yeah. So how would you help someone uncover their story? Like I know, I had great parents and a great upbringing, and that's something that I've kind of always struggled with is like there's not enough drama in my story to keep people interested. So, what would you tell somebody like that?
I'm sure that you have a story. I mean, I don't know you well. I'm sure you do. So, I mean, when I talk to people, we basically you can just go year by year by year and like what happened when you were 5 years old. Okay, next memory. Go through all your memories and then you can make a chart with your memories and your feelings. The other way you can pull out stories is go through like the nouns in your life, the firsts in your life.
Mm,
So you can make a story out of anything. Like for me, it was like learning to ride a bicycle and how terrible I was. And like I'm like not good at sports and I had my training wheels on too long. So I used that story when I was helping artists exactly what we're talking about find their unique style and their unique voice. A lot of times they keep their training wheels on too long because they are emulating their guru or they're emulating their teacher. And you're not going to learn that way. So what happened to me was because I had my training wheels on too long, that was, when they first came off, I didn't really know how to stop the bike. But at that time I lived in Miami where everything was nice and flat. But then we moved to
mhm.
Atlanta where there were a lot more hills, and, like, the second week we moved there, I had a very bad accident, and I cracked my jaw, and I couldn't talk, and the problem was is I had my training wheels on too long, and this, Elizabeth, goes back to what we were saying before. You have to be willing to fall down and learn how to do things. When you keep your training wheels on too long, then you're gonna really crash and burn when you finally try to do it, and it's okay to crash and burn, like, I only had one
Yeah.
serious accident. I didn't make that same mistake again.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I always try to ask people like, what do you want to be known for? Right? Like if you were to end up on the Today Show or like with this huge press opportunity, what do you want to be known for? And it's like you got to really be able to answer that question. And I feel like that's when I found myself floundering was because I couldn't answer that question for myself. So what
Mm,
do you want to be known for?
right. So that's why I just did this recently with a group of new artists, had them write their artist manifesto. So I say
Mm.
manifesto, people immediately think of the Unabomber, which is so unfortunate. But I really think every artist needs to like really declare yourself an artist, declare how much money you're going to make, not be afraid to name that number. Don't just say I want to make as much money as possible. Like really put your flag in the sand. Say why you're doing it, because being an artist, being an artpreneur, being any kind of entrepreneur, it's hard and it's going to get tough. And you really have to dig back into your why when things get tough to keep yourself motivated.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I found so much clarity when I finally had that moment of like, I know what I want to be known for, right?
Yes.
Like, and it's you can't get there without the ups and downs and the messy journey and the learning lessons, right? If we stay put and stay safe, we're not going to learn that thing of what we want to be known for. And it might change, it might evolve. I mean, I feel like my business is constantly pivoting and changing. But in that same podcast episode, I mentioned um, the CFO of Entrepreneur Magazine. He said what separates successful entrepreneurs is being adaptable and being okay with the constant change. I was like, oh, I needed that validation because I'm always changing my ideas.
Well, that's why artists actually, we are cut out to be the best kind of entrepreneurs there are, because what is adapting? It's creativity. Creativity is a
Mm,
survival strategy. I mean, that is what Darwin really meant when he didn't say it really means survival of the fittest. He meant survival of the one most willing to adapt to their environment.
yeah, so good. So, what would you say to somebody who is creating art and they love it and it's not selling? Would you say change the art or change the story and the message and the marketing?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I would have to ask them what are they doing to try to sell their art first, because you can't I wouldn't know
Mm,
unless, like, so are they getting it in front of the right people? Are they pricing their art too low? So a lot of artists thinks
mm-hmm.
cheaper is easier to sell and they sabotage themselves by pricing their art too low, and then people think it can't be good enough, so it actually hurts their art sales.
Isn't that crazy? I did a study once with my photography business where I went through all the inquiries that didn't book me, and I went on social media and I found out who their wedding photographers were. And this is such a valuable lesson because I had made the assumption that I was too expensive. Well, you bet your butt the majority of them chose photographers more expensive than me because there's this belief, which a lot of times is true, but let you get what you pay
That's
for,
right,
right?
and the best
So,
way to communicate a high value in that value perception is with a high price. That's like a shortcut.
yeah,
And there's some
it's the
things that
opposite
are
of what
more
we
desirable because they're expensive. Like think about a Tesla or a Chanel bag. It's the high price tag, the fact that there's this barrier to entry. That's part of what makes them be so appealing, so aspirational for people is because not everyone can afford it.
Yeah. So, do you help a lot of your students with like looking at their artwork and helping them price it and helping them come up with their story or their messaging? Is that in some of the things that you
Yeah, the
teach?
main thing I help them with, it's 2 things. It's the mindset work because you can't take the advice without get cleaning up the mindset because almost every problem that I see with artists, it comes from scarcity thinking. Thinking price
Mm-hmm.
cheaper is easier to sell. Like all these things, doing some things that are too crafty, like doing hand painted rocks or trying to sell coasters. So you got to clean that up. You got to clean up your mindset. And then it's the strategy. What is the step by step? How do you do email marketing? So I dive heavily into email marketing, list building, doing publicity, which we talked about already, and productivity and promotion, and not spending so much time on social media because the return on that investment, the investment in your time, is just not worth it.
Oh my gosh, I know. You're talking to like kind of the anti
That's
Instagrammer.
right.
I used to love it when it was just pictures and words, but it's and I do love short form video, but good gosh, I don't have time to sit here and create short form video for views when it doesn't get me any
No,
sales.
and if your listeners have not heard this, let's say it one more time. I call it the death of the scroll. So if you've ever been on any of those platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Reels, they're all the same. Before you're even done watching that video, there's that it's like pushing up. It wants you to scroll up. It wants you to scroll up. You never stop to see who created it. You never stop to visit their website. You never stop to do anything. So as a result, I've had clients who've had Reels go viral. I'm talking 47,000 views, and they didn't even pick up new followers. It's crazy. And
Mm.
TikTok, same thing. You can follow somebody on TikTok and never see their content again. And that's why we have these TikTok influencers with millions of followers who like, who's that? I never heard of that person. We don't know who that is.
Yeah,
Who cares?
yeah. Yep, it is pretty wild, really. I mean, I think about some of the videos I love watching. Like, I don't click over to their website or buy their stuff. Like, it's strictly entertainment.
That's right.
And entertainment, doesn't pay the bills. It's not going to pre qualify my clients. Um, I think there's marketing there and I think it can be done. I had a reel go viral. I wouldn't say I got any sales from it, but I did notice the quality of the people because it was a very on brand message, right? Like because I always say if I'm going to have something go viral, I don't want it to be for something stupid that has nothing to do with what I want to be known for.
Right.
So everything I post somehow points back to what I want to be known for, right? Like my social media manager one time was like, walk in a puddle in wet socks. And I was like, I can't get on board. Like I'm not going to do something just for the views. So I had a reel go viral. It was a quote, like nothing crazy, but it drew in the right type of followers. And I did get probably 50 to 100 followers from it. I'm not saying they bought anything. I don't really know. But that was like a one-off, kind of thing. Like there's not a lot of predictability to it. Like you said, email marketing, there's so much predictability and you own that marketing strategy from start to finish. You're not just like playing the lottery. Like, you are in control of improving your open rates and your click-through rates and nobody else. And that's why that's so powerful.
Yeah. And if we can even just compare the statistics between email and Instagram. So, Instagram, When I first started writing Artpreneur, there was a 1% engagement rate. By the time I had to
Mm.
edit that section of the book, it had dropped to 0.6. And this was in
Oh my
early
gosh.
2022. Now we're in 2023. I imagine it's even less, but let's just go with 0.6. So 0.6 for the average Instagrammer. Okay, so what about those influencers who are all saying, I'm going to teach you how to build your engagement and I'm going to teach you how to build your following? All right, so the average engagement rate for an influencer, 1.12%. It's not much
Oh my
better. Okay,
gosh.
so that means that you need to have, okay, I did the math for you. You need to have 4,000 followers on Instagram to get 24 people to engage with your message. Okay. What about email? Email. Okay. So let's say the average email open rate, would you say it's about 24%?
Yeah, my company, we can keep it above 40.
Okay, but let's use 24% just to do an average, okay? Because we did average on
Yeah.
Instagram. So to get
Yeah. Yeah.
24 people to open, read, engage with your email, you only need 100 email subscribers. And here's the
Yep.
biggest difference. On Instagram, the algorithm decides if that person even sees your message. In email,
Yep.
the person opening the email, they decide if they're going to open the email. And like you said, you have some control over how good your subject line is, how good your other emails are, so whether they want to hear from you or not. So
Yep.
I don't know, 4,000 people on Instagram to see your message versus 100 people on email. It's a lot more work to build an audience of 4,000 people than it is to find 100 people.
Yeah, I know. It's so true. And it's like the artists, I feel like, are the ones the most where people are like, be on Instagram. It's so visual. What you do is visual. Be on
Yeah, well,
Instagram.
it's like the
You
toilet
know?
thing. You don't need that exposure.
Yeah, right. I'm always going to come back to the toilet. That's so
Yeah,
good.
you don't need to be
Oh,
Zuckerberg's toilet.
oh my gosh. I know. It's so wild. And, social media is free. So I'm always one that's like, I'm not going to complain because it's free and we get what we get. But, ever since I really started leaning into email marketing and I help people build communities and pair those communities with email marketing, I'm like, the statistics are just a no brainer. Like, you can't argue with the data
No.
at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay, so tell us where we can find you. Is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't cover? I know I threw a lot of fun questions at you.
No, it was super fun. I love your energy. Okay, so if you like what you heard today, come find me on the Inspiration Place podcast. It's free. You can find it wherever you're listening to Messy Success. And if you want chapter 1 of my book, Artpreneur, it's also free. Go to schulmanart.com/believe. Schulman is SCHULMANART.
I love it. Cool. And we'll put all of this in the show notes and have all that good stuff for you guys there. And Miriam, it was such a pleasure getting to know you and chatting with you on here. And like I said in the beginning before we jumped on, there's not a lot of people I bring on the podcast that have not in some way already interacted with my community. And it was just such an honor to have you and to talk about your book.
Yeah, well, I hope we get to meet in real life soon. Thanks for having me, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
All right, that wraps up the interview with Miriam. I hope that you guys got some nuggets from that and enjoyed meeting her. I know that I did. And don't forget, if you love this podcast, to make sure you leave us a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. It would mean the absolute world to us. And if you are thinking about growing an engaged community yourself, or maybe you're wondering why your community is not engaged, don't forget that you can take our quiz over at elizabethhenson.co/quiz to find out exactly what is stopping you from building and growing your own engaged community. And make sure you guys go check out Miriam. We will have all her links in the show notes at elizabethhenson.co/E111. elizabethhenson.co/E111. And you guys can get all the good information about Miriam from this episode today. And we will see you soon.